just in the last couple seconds, I'm getting a little bit of background noise from your phone, a little bit of tinny noise.
Yeah, how's this now? I moved the chair.
A little better. Okay, IG's going live now. The rest of the streams are firing up. We'll have a short little lag here. All right, I see people populating on Instagram already. All right, countdown begins. Hey everybody, Nick Slavik, host of Ask a Painter Live, also the proprietor of the Nick Slavik Painting and Restoration Company. This is Ask a Painter Live. It's a weekly live show, 9+ years, where we talk about the life of a master craftsperson and a paint business entrepreneur. Special guest, industry friend of mine, Danny Kerr from Breakthrough Academy, here with us today. Danny Kerr.
Thanks for having me, Nick. Good to be here, man.
Yeah, likewise. And you're one of my favorite people in the industry because every time we get together, we always talk about the big overarching things, the big issues we're seeing with businesses, the big issues we're seeing in the industry. So we'll be taking any questions, any comments you guys want here today. I'm already seeing some comments come in through YouTube. Danny's here from Breakthrough Academy. And these guys are some of the highest level coaches you can get in the entire industry. They coached me through a very important time in the growth of my business. And I think you're going to understand what kind of value I got after talking to Danny today. So Danny, the topic for today is going to be team accountability, team efficiency. And we're going to talk specifically kind of about like the big 4 positions in a painting company. Yes.
Sounds good. Yep. Absolutely, man.
All right. So especially with an industry and an economy that I guess I would make the bet that we are going back to a normal economy down from a very sort of irrational high COVID economy. Efficiency is going to be a big thing. We need to get more out of the same amount out of less, you could argue, than we did before. So with our professional painting businesses, Danny, how are we going to do that?
Well, it's been, I mean, what year did you start your business, actually? I'm just curious.
2007.
Yeah, interesting timing.
Right.
For those who went through that, especially in the States over Canada, actually, but that was a real economic downturn. That was right, in a way that was kind of beyond us. And there was all the same strategies applied, but it was pretty make or break. Like you just said, we are now in a normal economy. So all I've ever known, especially in the painting side, because I started in 2005 and we went through the 2008 recession. All I've ever known is how much hard work it really truly does take to run your own business. And I think for a lot of people that started in the last more or less 10 years, people didn't realize like running a business requires like tight financial controls, like clear KPIs for everybody, hard accountability, the ability to let somebody go because they're not bringing an ROI because it's dragging the business down. And a bit more of a ruthlessness mentality. There's a bit more mentality. It's like we have to protect the mothership, which is the business. And we've gotten away with murder for the last little while. And, you had mentioned, we've been in a heightened economy. I mean, I think people know this by now, but 2020, we printed 40% of all the money that's ever been in the circulation in the entire country of most Western countries. And then we continue to print. I think we're still actually printing just to keep up with what we've created for ourselves. But that is, in the history of the country, as far as I know anyways, that is unprecedented. That's never been done before. So we were in a game of Monopoly where everybody got, like, instead of $200 for pass and go, they got $20,000 for pass and go. And that's not a real game. And so what we're going to talk about today is just standard business practices that I think we all talk about, but I don't think we dial in or take as seriously as had to be because we didn't have a need to. Now we do.
So what's really interesting is it sounds like we are completely aligned on this, which is, down from an irrational high, and we're going back to good old fashioned business where lots of things have to be done at a lot of times. Things have to remain in balance. And if you could summarize, certainly the peak of this during the COVID years was an irrational demand. But when you look at the economic data from the US and a lot of the paint businesses that and certainly my paint business, we've had this tailwind of leads behind us for 15 years, basically since the last housing crisis. And when you start looking at the industry, and a lot of stats from our big vendors say that, most of their accounts turn over 18 to 24 months. That means most of the industry turns over every 18 to 24 months, which means most of the entire residential painting industry has turned over somewhere between 2 or 3 times, even just since COVID. So the goldfish memory that we have and the sort of economic wisdom that we have is basically non-existent. So I think what you and I are trying to impart in people is for people who have been in business through one global pandemic, two economic crises, and then some other times where we have wind in our sails, we have to do a whole bunch of fundamentals good all the time consistently. And we're going back to normal. It's not a bad economy. So, like you said, it's going to be hardcore accountability. It's going to be mastering the basics. It's not going to be a new app. It's not going to be some new strategy. It's going to be good old fashioned business and management again. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I'll say this too. I mean, I think there's a very real reality. What is a little different? It's like we're in a normal economy, but I think there's a lot of businesses that overstaffed or didn't hold much with individuals. So they're now, I call it like they've almost grown bigger than they should. You know, if they're at 10,000 feet and they shouldn't be flying that high, but through artificial, stimulation of the economy, they are. And now they've got to figure out how to safely come back down a little bit to mitigate risk and to make sure they've got a stable organization to work with. Because if you can charge more or less whatever you want and you can still get the work, if you've got more work coming at you than you have the ability to go produce, it produces a certain methodology or a way of growing, a certain way of being. And some people may have been doing that for the last 10 years. And so there is no pain, because there's pain in not only going back to old-fashioned basics, but having to undo a little bit of the bad habits that you've built in the organization the last while.
Couldn't agree. What are some of the bad habits, Danny, before we jump into the roles and some of the KPIs and what we're going to actually do to squeeze the efficiency?
I think one is that it's you can't just sell any job to anybody anymore. Price matters. Didn't used to matter, and that's not that it's the only thing. It never will be the only thing, but it does matter more than it used to do. And I think what we considered a really good salesperson might not have been. Yeah. And we're going to start to realize, oh wait, like this takes a lot of constant follow up. I got to be on my leads all the time if I want to be a successful salesperson. And we might have hired people that are order takers and not realized it till now, right? We have to go from being a bit of a farm team or a farmer to more of a hunter. And there's a need in that in the sales department. I think in the production department, I think people have demanded higher wages, and they should. We've gone through a lot of inflation. The cost of living has gone up dramatically. But we haven't always really looked at, like, is there an ROI to when I'm giving you more money, are we bringing more value to the organization? Or am I just giving you more money to retain you because I'm afraid of losing you, because it's hard to recruit? It wasn't an emotional thing. And I may have overinflated the average cost of salaries and wages of my people without realizing how it affects profit, because we could always just do more revenue. Well, now I've got to be a little more calculative of what actually the raises can be and what my current costs of production per labor hour per person can be, what my current overhead costs of management can be, to have a sustainable entity, to have something that can continue. So yeah, there's just bad habits like that. It's like the types of people we may have hired, the types of habits they may have formed over time. And the strategy we would use sometimes would be a lazy one, is to throw more money at the issue until we keep the people, and can't do that anymore. There's a limiting factor, which is there's less money, which is not a bad thing. We need it. We need to flush out some of this money. It needs to get out, and we need to get back to normal, like you're saying. So.
And I love this too. I'm starting about 24 months ago, I was feeling a change. I was looking at some of the data in my own business. I talked to smart people like you. I talked to other big, large paint businesses out there, and they were all feeling the same thing. And I feel like over the last 12 to 24 months, a lot of the people who run big professional businesses and are associated with a lot of industry data have coalesced around this same idea, which is this is a completely normal business cycle. And in fact, what we've just been through for the last 15 years has been very abnormal. Like typically, to go 15 years without a recession, without a reset, without some sort of economic downturn. And then even during a global pandemic, when we didn't know if we were going to be illegal, it turns out we had 4x demand, not something hardly any of us saw. So again, it's just that I think when things change, people get scared. There's uncertainty, but you have to remember, like, perspective of what we've been through, perspective of what kind of change this is. This is a completely normal business cycle, and completely normal business things need to be done. And in my business, what we do is we track the data to help us with that, because, like you just mentioned, you making big decisions based on feelings, and your feelings aren't typically as objective as data. So, yeah.
And I think of it too as just like levers. Like, do I have a recruiting lever where I can increase or decrease that lever? Do I have a marketing lead generation lever where I can increase or decrease? Do I have a, production lever where I can increase or decrease the production capacity. And levers are created by systems, right? Because if you have a really good recruiting process that you can count on, and you know that by this type of networking process and this way of reaching out through Indeed and this specific vendor I use to help me source my flow, it's proven, and we can see the numbers and we can actually calculate how much it takes to achieve a certain hire. Now you have something you can rely on that you can turn up or down, but I don't think we created a lot of levers over the last 5 years. I think we were just busy servicing what was coming at us. And it is time to create levers throughout not only like the planning of the whole business, but how that drills down into each individual's job, so that they can be pulling that lever too along the way, right? Yeah. Anyway, we'll get into it, but we need the ability to not only track how we're doing and see how we're doing, but know what turns that number up or down, the process behind it that we have proven in our organization that works.
And at the core of what you're saying is what big professional businesses know is that these things are not mysteries. How do you find leads? How do you find labor? They're not like, hey, what should we do? How do you do that? It's more of like, we have 8 different options for each. Some are expensive, some are cheap, some take effort, some take money. Some work now, some work then, some randomly work here or there. But we have those levers, and we have to kind of test it out to see, we have time and money budgets in our companies, and these aren't mysteries. We just need to be working these levers to try to figure out how to hit those internal benchmarks so we can turn a net profit, if I'm hearing you correctly.
Yeah, and I'll give you an example of this. Like in 2008, actually, when things did downturn, I remember it took us 10 doors that we had to knock to get a lead, 3 leads to get an estimate scheduled, and about 2 to 3 estimates done to get a job. Okay. Yep. And when 2008 happened, it took us 20 doors to get a lead, right? And the rest of it was relatively similar. Our sales ratio was a little down, actually, and our average job size was a little down. But I could calculate exactly how down it was and how many more doors we would have to physically knock to achieve the same amount of revenue. Now, that wasn't our only lead source, but it was at the time 60% of our leads were coming from it. So it was a lead source that I had such a good calculatable understanding of, not only how it was, but how it's changed. And then you can do different strategies to increase efficiencies. I just like push the lever down to be like, we're just going to do more. But it worked, right? And it sustained us through a hard time, because I wasn't just like helpless being like, we need to just hopefully get more leads. I was like, no, here is the number of like new callers we need to hire. Here's the amount of hours they need to work, and here's the averages they need to achieve in order to bring an ROI to the organization, given the new staff that we're seeing in the economy and in our business.
And that's one of the funnest math problems to do, having data you can trust and then making projections into the next year based on changing or non-changing data. So now let's overlay some very specific strategies or tactics over a professional painting company. A professional painting company has some technicians in the field, subcontractors or W-2s. It's got estimators, it's got project managers, and some office staff. Which sort of bucket do you want to start with, where we talk about specific sort of things that we can do, strategies and tactics for the coming time period?
Yeah, so we can talk about each one of these roles. I mean, we're on sales. We can start with sales. It's the easiest. We can move into the other ones after. And I think actually I would say this, if there was one role that probably has this, I hope for a lot of us, it is the sales team, right? So it's like, it's relatively simple, but it's understanding how many dollars they need to be booking in order to be worth ROI. And some of them are all commission based, some of them can be base salary based, but you need to justify for your role as an estimator, you need to book, and usually the number is $1 to $2 million. That's what I usually see for most estimators, to be worth your overhead costs to the organization. So you should have a goal on how much you need to book this year based on the company's goal. So it's like, how much revenue do we need to produce plus a little extra, because you're not going to have all those bookings go into that fiscal year. You need to look at the sales ratio averages. So what is the amount of quotes that you're doing versus jobs that you're actually booking? And that matters, because someone could just burn and churn through quotes all the time and get nothing booked, and then suddenly you've wasted kind of marketing dollars and resources on the wrong human. So I always look at that as kind of like a quality metric, if you will. So it's like, how good of a job are you doing of the job you have, which is doing a quote. And then another big one is just gross profit estimated, because you have to bring in profit to the organization for the jobs you're estimating. And you can book all the jobs you want and put them in at low dollar bids and just be like, look at me, I'm great. And then production team gets in and they're like, dude. Yep. What I'm saying for estimators, and this will be true for almost every role, is you want, like, sales booked is like a volume metric. Sales ratio or closing rate is kind of like a quality metric. It's like the quality that you do. And gross profit is a profitability metric. And it's like volume, quality, and profit held together with 3 different numbers in that one role helps that person have a more balanced approach to their role. And so where I do see mistakes is people from an estimating perspective will be like, it's all about dollars booked. Just go book dollars. But they might have a terrible sales ratio, or they might bring all the jobs in terribly unprofitably. But when you weigh out those 3 numbers and you say, I want a little bit of each, I want sales booked with a good sales ratio and a good gross profit, you're helping them think more dynamically about how they achieve their goals.
No, I like that a lot. Good. Yeah, that's a good rounding out. It's like a pulse. If you track those numbers and then track the direction, the velocity of those things over time, you can get a pretty good pattern of how your person's doing.
Yeah, yeah, it's goal actual. So we'll set weekly, or usually it's an annual goal broken down to quarters, broken down to months, broken down to weeks. And now I know that you need to do 8 quotes at a whatever 50% closing ratio to close 4 jobs with an average job size of $2,000 to bring in $8,000 booked per week. And I can sustain that throughout a year with one salesperson, and now we've got a golden goal. So.
And talk about accountability or meeting rhythms with like a salesperson or an estimator. What do you guys typically recommend?
So this goes back to like when I was 18 years old, but college pro painters was my background. And the first thing that they ever did with me at 18 years old, which considered me like a young punk, no idea what I'm doing, to form me was, yes, they did training, but they had weekly accountability meetings with me one-on-one. There was something, I don't think PCA, we talk about this all the time, but it's like GSNR is what it's called, goal setting and review. And it started with a little like Excel file, right, where I've got my goals like we just talked about, front and center on my dashboard. I've got a breakdown on another tab of what those goals look like coming out every single week. And then I've got a section to write in how I did for the last week. So what did I do? What did I miss? Did I hit? By how much and why? I've got a place to kind of put in what my goals are for the next week moving forward. So what am I thinking I want to go get done? I've got to have my calendar prepared too. So they always made me make sure that like the block scheduling wise, I showed where I'm going to spend my time to hit the goals I just set.
Yep.
And then I have to go submit that on a Friday so that the boss can oversee it on a Monday morning, think through if my goals were good or not and how I did, and then provide me coaching advice to help me hit my goals. Versus I'm not out there being just told what to do. I'm trying to say, I want to hit my goals. Can you help me? And I'm coming to him constantly to help me achieve my year-end goals. And it's been like that since I was 18 years old. So whether I've got someone, as a franchisee, I had someone doing GSR with me. A coach basically was working with me. As a general manager, I was doing that. The VP was doing GSRs with me, and I was doing GSRs with my franchisees. Now I've moved to the academy. I'm overseeing a CRO, sales and marketing. I'll do GSRs with my head of sales and head of marketing, and they will in turn do it with their team below. And that's how we hold accountability, and that's kind of like the way in which we prepare and kind of have meetings on a weekly rhythmic basis. And it's not just about reporting in numbers. It's about strategy. It's about feelings too, actually. I forgot there's one section in there is how you feeling. I fill that out every week. Because sometimes I'm feeling like crap. And it's like, sometimes my report is feeling like crap. And I'm reading through this and I'm like, I'm not going to get into the numbers with this guy this week. There's no way that that's going to be the thing that's going to be the needle mover. It's his alignment or it's his whatever. And I'm going to be there for him. And we switch the conversation up a bit.
So immediate reaction to that is, boy, Danny, that's a lot of management, consistent accountability and management. And when I look out across the industry, and this is even overlaying it onto my business, management seems like the thing that this industry is lacking the most. It feels like we got great technicians and we got some visionaries and salespeople. And for most of the people who run these businesses, what you just described sounds painful, honestly. So what are we to do if we are not managers? We don't possess managers, but we know that this is the way forward.
At some level, you have to realize your job description that you're currently doing likely is full of things that aren't that productive for the organization. A really good gap for everyone who's listening is to sit down on your phone and calculate the number of people that you run in your company. So that could be subcontractors too. But how many people are led by you in your decision making? Times that by 30, let's say 35 hours a week. I don't think everyone always hits 40, and I think whatever stuff causes people to be less productive. So it's called 35 hours a week. How many hours are you leading in a week? Even Nick, you are in your head. I don't know if you want to do it or grab your phone. But how many? I'd love to know how many hours do you lead in a week. What do you think?
That's actually a good question. I'd have to sit down and calculate that. Yeah.
For you. Give me the numbers.
Oh, sorry, your audio just cut out there, Danny, when you picked up the phone.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Yep.
Sorry, I went to go to get my calculator and it's connected to the audio.
Oh, perfect.
Let's do rough math with you. Number of people you lead. Just give me a rough number in your org
Uh,
right now.
Peak of the year, 40.
40. Okay, and let's times that by 35. So that's right. We're gonna have to times it by 4 because I'm not good at that fragmented math. I'm gonna use my calculator. But what's 4 times 4? 1600.
16? Yep.
1600 hours in a week that you lead.
Yep.
And this process we just discussed, you're not going to go meet with every single one of those people, but you as the leader will likely meet with your head of sales or sales manager, your head of production or your production manager, and maybe your office admin. So you have 3 meetings. They're usually about half an hour each. And through those 3 half-hour meetings, usually on a Monday, so it's an hour and a half of work plus prep, let's call it 3 hours worth of work, you're going to lead 1,600 hours of production in a week.
Yeah. That sounds like good leverage.
Leverage, right? And it's like, it's realizing, well, I already work 60 hours a week. I'm like, yeah, but how much of that 1,600 hours you're supposed to be leading are you actually doing?
Yeah.
Because for every hour you're just for every hour you're doing some of that 1,600 hour stuff, it's a drop in the ocean compared to how much could you be getting done. And we probably have this conversation with everybody all the time. It's like realizing I need to relinquish control and responsibility, and it's not an overnight thing, and I get it. But it's also realizing, like, what am I shifting that energy to? Here is probably the highest leverage activity that you could possibly do when starting to make that shift.
Yep. Yeah. What I see in a lot of the great companies that are associated with you guys and other companies within the industry is they do realize, like, there's the doing the technician stuff, there's the visionary and the hot, big relationship in sales, and the people who can assume that management position and get a good rhythm with that. That's where the rubber hits the ground. That's where all this traction comes from in an organization, because typically technicians don't like interfacing with visionaries because that's the two personalities don't kind of mix all that well, and visionaries are typically inconsistent and all that other stuff. And maybe this is a little personal, but no, I've had to come to terms with that maybe 3 to 5 years ago, and then try to assume a role or more management style techniques in my own business, because not only was my personality not set up to be a manager, but honestly, there's not many true managers out there, if we're being honest. So it's not a role where you're just like, oh, look at that, we got managers here, or I'm going to hire a manager and all of a sudden management is solved. It's like, doesn't seem like it happens like that. It's a constant it's a constant thing, like diet and exercise, it feels like.
You know what I would say too, because I'm a visionary, and I honestly do struggle with being the consistent manager type, and I have to be, as a part of Breakthrough Academy.
Yep.
What makes it fun is when it's a game. Yeah. When the company's goals for the year, the team has goals, they have bonuses on that, why it's important for them, the house they could buy, the car the thing, everyone's tied into the why behind the organization and how that affects them as individuals. And my leadership style anyways is to be more of that coach than to be that manager. And it's my default style, and that's what I'll utilize, but it makes it more fun because I'm a coach trying to get the team to win the playoffs. I'm not the manager trying to hold you accountable to your number and reprimand you when you don't. And that's helped me anyways. It's just my approach to the whole thing. And so, yeah, I mean, I probably could be a better manager.
We all could.
We all could. To play to my strengths, I approach this as, we got a game to play this year. We're trying to hit, $17 million. We've all got a part to it. Everyone's got their numbers to break down to hit that. We've got a challenge. We've got the biggest, economic shift we've had in the last 10 years, and we've got to problem solve that together. And how fun is it for us to strategically approach this? And I get to be your coach to help you get across the line. And in doing so, the whole company's going to win. So yeah, it's just a frame of mind, maybe a little bit, but that's helped me with that whole manager issue. Because I'm not a good manager.
No, most founders and scalers are not, button up sleeve, shirt, tie, office hours kind of managers and stuff. So I think everybody's got to find their voice though, because, whether you do have a bunch of managers or not, you need to manage the managers. Somebody needs to manage the managers. There's always management involved. So just like an artist, a singer needs to find their own true voice, and then it feels genuine, and then people are, adhered to it and things like that. I think the same thing goes with management and leadership as well too.
Yeah, and we didn't speak to this, but you also said there's technicians and there's visionaries. For those who are technicians that listen to this type of stuff, I want them to also feel totally secure and fine to be a technician and to not have to worry about trying to grow into management and to build a good business that's sustainable with the craft that they do and be able to be at comfort with that. I think, in the economy we live in, especially, I mean, maybe it's just because I'm in coaching, so I'm always in these conversations, but those who want to scale and are visionaries, yes, there is this process you should put in place. Those who are natural technicians that love the craft, don't worry about this. Go have fun building a painting company that's about you and your ability to deliver the best product and service to your customer. And don't try and become a manager, because that's where I have seen it get toxic. Because what happens
Oh,
is their why goes away and they
yes.
become lethargic and they're in the office on a computer and they're like, this is not fun anymore. And to acknowledge that ahead of time, I think is important. So
Know thyself, Danny, as they say, right? And this goes back to that old adage. Well, listen, Carol has been painting with me for 8 years. We should probably just make her a project manager or something. It's like, you better be careful. They better have the personality for it, because uh, tenure doesn't equal management. You have to make sure the right personality is there. And a recent realization that I've been having with a lot of my other sort of business owner colleagues in the industry is that you can have a commercial and industrial salesperson who creates all their own opportunities, sells $4.5 million a year. They're a technician. They're a
right.
high level technician, but they're not managing anybody. And in fact, they're probably not good at they could not be. They might not be good at managing other people. Painter, salesperson, project manager, they could all be technicians as well too. And that realization of, yes, you're making some money, you might be on a leadership team, but if you don't manage anybody and you don't manage anybody well, you might just be a high level technician, not just be a high level
Yeah,
technician. You
yeah.
are a
You're
high
good
level
at the craft that
technician.
you do. You provide something that you do really well. Managing people is its own skill.
Yeah.
It's its own thing.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some would argue a superpower. So, okay, we talked about estimator salespeople. Which
We'll go into
Okay,
production. We'll start with the PM and then let's go down into technicians. But
sounds good.
for the project manager or production manager, depending on how you've structured your organization, it's all about dollars produced, right? So that's your volume. It's like we need to produce a certain amount. And in paintings, very important. Not all states are like this, but there is seasonality, especially if you're doing exterior work. So there's a bit of a game to that, right? It's like we need to have so many painters producing so many hours per week, given the months that we have in our production season, in order to achieve a certain result. So they're usually going dollars produced, but they're also looking at hours. And hours are done for two things. One, to understand capacity and how much we can produce in a given week, given the amount of hours we go after. So it's like, if I'm looking at whatever, $10,000 in production in a week, how many hours did that take? And what's our average dollars per worked hour that we can count on to achieve our year-end revenue goals? It's also important for productivity, right? So if you're looking at hours, you can also be looking at how many dollars are we paying all these people for all these hours, and is it profitable for the amount of work that we're producing? Well, I might notice that my power washing hours are way more profitable than my interior work hours. And is there a way to even play with that about what type of production we go after, right?
Yep.
Along with that is gross profit.
Mm-hmm.
So gross profit is basically the amount of money made off of a job after labor, subs, and material. So it's not all your overhead, but it is for the project manager a direct it's the direct result that they can bring to the organization for
Yep.
profitability. They don't have control over the rest. So don't tie them into a year-end profit of the whole business. It's like, no, you're in charge of production. So after labor, subs, and material, can you optimize the efficiency to bring in good profitability? And then the final thing is something we used to measure, and you can measure it in different ways, but we go after net promoter, right? So that's the average, the percentage of customers that would go above and beyond to refer you to others. And the way it's
Yep.
measured is every single customer would take a quick survey out of 10. If they give you a 9 or a 10 out of 10, it's a plus 1 point. 8 is neutral, 7 or below is a negative 1 point. And then you add up all your points divided by the amount of people you've talked to, and you get a net promoter score. And anything in the 40 to 60 range is kind of usually what I see. And it's saying that's how many people would go above and beyond to refer you to others. So you're not looking for 100%. It's actually all about who would go above and beyond. And 40 to 60% is kind of good. So again, production and hours to kind of go after volume, gross profit to go after profitability, and net promoter to go after quality. Again, quality, volume, profit.
I love you're rounding out the same thing for estimate. You think, well, what does an estimator have to do with quality? It's like almost everything to do with quality. You have to have enough budget there. You need to have the scope right. You have to have the stuff spec right for it. And I love that you have a rounded out set of KPIs, not just top line revenue. Just how many dollars did you produce this week? Because that can tell many different stories, right?
Totally. Yeah, I think a lot of it is like hard numbers that need to be achieved, and then efficiency factors on how they achieve it.
Agreed.
A good way
No,
to look at it.
absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. We did estimators, salespeople, project managers, two left, technicians and admins. Where do you want to go next?
Let's go technicians, because it's so they're under the PM. Sometimes you
Yep.
have website managers, let's say, or project, but let's just say technicians are in the same kind of vein, right? One thing we're not going to do is have them go after dollars produced, because they don't know the dollars, and they don't need to know the dollars, and they don't have any control over the dollars. And at this point, the only thing that they really have a ton of control over is hours produced.
Yep.
And the best version of this is when you can have a hours goal on the job, and this should come from good standardized estimating, which is a whole other
Mm-hmm.
conversation. But having good standardized estimating allows you to have an amount of hours budgeted for a project, and then they can go after that, right? And so there's a whole incentive. And you guys probably know piece rate, everyone probably does, but there's a way to do it without piece rate, even where you're just looking at goal versus actual on the hours for the job. And then I would also just go net promoter score as well. So it's like how much, like, what's your specific painter net promoter based on all the jobs you've worked on and what the customer is rated on that. Yeah, hours would be profit and volume if you're going against goal, and then net promoter would be your quality score. So.
I like the net promoter because it's one metric you gather for multiple humans, right? And
Yeah.
you can take the same job and within that net promoter score, if it's low, you can always ask the second question, which is, what made you not do it? Was it a horrible estimating experience? Was it the paint was all ordered wrong? Was it my technician was not on, so you can really parse it out to see then who takes ownership of that score. Yes.
That's a really good point, Nick. So you can literally have one card or one like email that gets sent, and it says, what's your overall score out of 10? What was your experience with the production manager, with the production team, with the sales rep, with the office even, and then see how they score within that, and then have an overall out of 10 as well. Yeah, you can do that for sure.
So this is why we love Danny and BTA, because if you were to survey, just pick 10 of the very large professional companies over $8 million in res repaint painting in the US, if they have subs, it's typically you give a sub a percentage and you're not tracking them by hours. Now you can come up with that amount by hours on a job, but it's typically just a percentage because that's how subcontractors work. For the people who have W-2s, in-house employees, it's typically an hour because, if you rate your painters on gross profit, let's just be honest. It's not because people are stupid. It's just because people aren't exposed to gross profit. Most paint business owners don't have a full grasp of the ins and outs of gross profit, let alone, a $25 an hour painter. So you have to rate them on things they own, and it is those hours. So it is one of those things where you break down by some formula. In my company, we take revenue minus the materials and then divide by our basically goal rate for revenue per hour. And that just gives us amount of hours per job. And it's an imperfect metric, but compared to what? It's actually a pretty good thing. As long as it's consistent, as long as that rate rises when you raise your charge rate, you can actually have a consistent metric of saying a bedroom should take this many hours. A set of cabinets should take this many hours. And then your painters either hit the hours or they didn't. And that's something they can feel and own, right? Instead of gross profit, because they don't control paint.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. So if you notice an exterior, siding job with trim has a much higher paint cost to labor percentage than a trim job where you're barely using any paint with high labor need and low paint. And if you're upselling the paint, which the painter has no control over, they're going to make a lot more money on certain projects than other projects simply because you just added a ton of product and upsold it. Yep. They have no control over that. Yep. But if it's purely on hours, that is the one thing that they have a direct ability to control and manipulate and do better or worse in.
100%. And one weird metric that I've added, and I've seen a bunch of other paint business owners add nowadays, is an interesting metric, is attendance as well too, because it's been interesting. This is not a judgment, Danny Kerr. This is not a judgment. I just want to be.
I just hate it. It's just
you know where this is going, but I have to say it out loud, which is when we were brought up, us old guys in the industry, pre-housing recession, 2007, 8, 9, when we started, 80 hours was a pretty good start for a work week for us, especially when we were growing things and things like that. And one thing that I noticed, and even before the pandemic, when we would have our apprenticeship program, we'd hire a bunch of young Gen Zs, even the youngest millennials. it was a struggle for anybody to hit 40. And we got unlimited overtime. I was given perks and allowances and this and that. And honestly, I couldn't spur anybody on. And it actually made me very angry. This made me a bad manager for years because it's like, oh my God, you could make $100,000 a year in my company as a painter if you worked. We work a 4-day work week. If you work a Friday and a Saturday, it's a lot of work. You could push yourself over 100 grand a year, and not one person worked any overtime. And so after a while, I had to put a metric on the low end. The incentives didn't work to get people to do more. I had to put an incentive to stop people from working less, which is, if you want a raise potential, so many of your projects have to hit budget, and you also have to complete a minimum amount of hours to be eligible for a raise. Now, not judgment, but again, it's one of those things where, just like you started this conversation with, we're sensing changes in the industry. I sensed a change from when I came up in the industry, and we put a metric in place there to make sure that when I hired somebody and I put all this money into their health insurance and all this other stuff in their training, that they were going to produce enough hours to support their own role. And so we just adapted, and I got over the whole anger part, but you just have to adapt to the things that change out there. So that's a weird metric that I've seen myself and other people add as well too.
I want to speak to this a bit, because one of the things we're talking about right now is KPIs and often bonus structures tied to these KPIs, and driving through goal setting review meetings and accountability, and all these terms and processes and ways of doing things are great, but you do need one fundamental element that has to be in every person you work with, and it's something called attainment. It's the preference to set and hit goals. Because if you hire a bunch of people that don't have attainment and apply the structure that we're talking about right now, it won't actually work. It will fall flat.
It's actually really bad.
So babysitting people whilst trying to hold them to something they don't want to be held accountable to. And this is actually a really important underlying factor, which is, when you interview people, do you know how to look for someone's ability to set and hit goals?
Yeah.
Because if you're and actually, even if some people are like, yeah, I look for people who are good achievers, it's actually different than achievement. If you're a good achiever, maybe you get straight A's in school because you're smart. Maybe you won all the sports medals because you're very naturally athletic. That could be a sign of attainment, but what is true attainment is the preference and ability to set a goal, break it down to its components, and work on the elements required strategically to achieve it by the end of the goal period, or whatever it would be. Even if you miss the goal, it doesn't matter nearly as much as how you pursued it and what you did along the way. And I've interviewed a lot of people, especially people who are like, I've got straight A's in school. I graduated university with a 4.0. And I'm like, cool. But what was the process you took to getting there? Was that an intentional thing you set up ahead of time? What mattered to you? What were the steps you took to achieve it? And it's in understanding the story about how people go out setting and hitting and achieving goals in their life that really matters. And if you're going to set up the kind of structures we're talking about right now, you need to step back and be like, do I have even a place to interview for attainment in the roles that are going to have goals established with them? Because otherwise, like you said, Nick, it kind of fall on deaf ears. And look, man, sorry, I'll stop in a second. I get it. It's hard to recruit. It's harder than it's ever been. It's actually probably not getting easier. But it is also a choice where it's like, I'm going to go and spend $5,000 a year on recruiting efforts and ads, and put in 3 to 5 hours a week in recruiting my team, versus I'm going to go put in $60,000 this year into recruiting ads, and I'm going to go full bore because I want an A team. And your company and its success and its ability to be driven forward, even through hard times, especially now, is directly proportional to the people you have on the team. And there is
100%.
no amount of motivation or systems or inspiring things you could do to drag a team across the line of B and C players versus just hiring A's. And it's hard. I get it. This is easy to say on a podcast. And I've been in July when 3-year painters quit and no one's going to produce that job tomorrow. And you just need to I get it. But that shouldn't stop us from becoming the best recruiters in the city that we operate in. And until you can plant that flag, know that there's massive opportunity, missed opportunity, to have a really good, well-running organization by having good people. And again, attainment for today's example, there's lots of things to look for, but attainment is a very important one. So,
yeah, it's the old tech thing: garbage in, garbage out. Create the greatest system on earth, create the greatest incentive plan. If you mismatch it with bad people or not the right people, it's not worth anything. And it's actually going to create a lot of friction. So you make a really good point, Danny. Okay, we got one left. Admins, office staff. What do we do with them?
Yeah, people always struggle with this one because they're like, okay, they're just They just help everyone. They're in
Well,
service.
well, the answer is obvious, Danny. It's keystrokes per minute. That's all. That's the only KPI you do, right?
And I'll say this too, like not all admins need to be held hard accountable to big company goals. Like they are often their gift is to more be in service. And if there was one role on this list that doesn't need as much attainment, it's often admin. But there is a few things, right? So one thing is AR collected. So if your accounts receivable grow every year and it slowly causes you to have bad cash flow, arguably it is a very healthy thing to have someone keep AR below 3% or whatever the number would be that they can track, and you have them, like a dog on a bone, focused on that one little thing, right? Reports in on time, right? So if their ability to deliver you data in a timely manner so that you can do your goal setting review meetings, your staff can be prepared properly for their stuff, and you can make better decisions, that's a valuable thing. Although it's not a metric, it's still measurable. Were the reports in by Friday at 5 o'clock, and how many weeks of the year were they in by 5 o'clock on Fridays, right?
Have you job costed every job we completed last week? Because on Monday we sent you a list. By Wednesday we want those things done so we can start analyzing, right?
Yeah. So it's kind of like attendance. You're like, every week, did it get done? Check yes or no.
Yep.
And then response time for incoming calls and emails, because we all know that directly influences obviously our lead conversion ratios and our customer success ratios for those working with us. These things need to be trackable. So if they're not trackable, you shouldn't put them out there. That's true for all these KPIs. But those are three that you could look at. AR collected helps with profitability. Reports in on time helps with, overall everything, actually, to be honest, but helps with the ability for you to move fast in your organization. Response time to calls and emails helps with quality, I would say, in a lot of ways, the customer experience.
Couldn't agree more. So now you've rounded out really good metrics that as a manager, because you're not going to listen to every phone call, you're not going to go in every estimate, you're not going to put in every paint order, and you're not going to paint every house. You have to run a certain amount of your business by feelings and then by data. The feelings is you can look your humans in the face. The data are these things that you collect, these KPIs, your internal managerial accounting reports, things like that. And then you need to have a certain amount of structure around accountability meetings, one-on-ones, quick and dirty of one-on-ones. Are we talking, you said potentially weekly. Are you so structured that at same time, same place, same agenda? Do you try to get it that rigid, or as long as you hit it once a week, are we okay?
They're literally sitting as a reoccurring half-hour meeting on my Mondays for the entire year. That doesn't, I'm not a robot, so it doesn't mean like we're perfect. There are times that I will move that reoccurring meeting to a Tuesday instead of a Monday because scheduling wise or holidays or stuff comes up. But it is in its basicness, like necessity, a reoccurring thing, because if it's not, it doesn't last through production season. Everyone can be all hooray, like we've got some GSRs we do every week, but we kind of schedule them when we have time. The minute you don't have time, which is production season,
always.
First thing we get, we talked today, right? We talked. Okay, that's GSR.
What's more important? Produce that job. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is important that it's done. If it needs to be moved, at least it's being moved from a stable place that it holds a spot every single week. And I think it's important. It's important to have repetition in that. The meeting, this is important, like kind of discernment. The meeting agenda is the same. It can go off in different directions, though. And the major one that I mentioned earlier is if I'm checking in with you and it's like, how you feeling? It's like, man, like I'm so lost right now, or I'm so mad, or I'm like, we're not looking at numbers today. We're not going.
You bypass those.
It's like, we're going to stop here and we're going to talk about you and where you're at emotionally, because there's skill and there's commitment. And like through GSR, you're trying to, improve skill and drive to hit a result. And then there's commitment. And when commitment is wavering, that's the only thing that's going to be a performance indicator for that person's week. And you need to slow down, pause the whole agenda of what you had prepared, and just focus in on the commitment side of where they're at in their headspace. So,
all right. So you're kind of talking about the human side of these meetings, because sometimes for people who don't have good management conditioning and haven't seen a lot of good management sort of examples in their life, you sit down and sometimes you just have a spreadsheet with a whole bunch of numbers. And if something is red, you say, why is it red? If something is green, you say, good job. Maybe we should do more. What's the human? maybe one tip, one thing you've learned from doing one-on-ones over the years, one tip on the human side, beside, if somebody's struggling, pivot and listen to them. But during these one-on-one meetings, it's probably your only time where you're together with this person and they are opening up to you. The human side, give us a tip, Danny, something that you've learned over the years.
Um, so I think that you need to realize that you will always lead people under your own bias and assumptions, and that people will always come in with their own bias and assumptions. And that's fine. That's normal human behavior. And you can't expect people to change or do your bidding through an iron fist. And it is this process of like conflict management, we call it, where it's like when stuff is going on, when there is misalignment, to just follow a very simple conflict model, right? It's like seek first to understand, then seek to be understood.
Yeah.
Find common ground through those conversations, and do not try and solve the problem in the heat of the moment. Just try and find common ground. To take time to slow down, to be not be like, well, you're pissed about this because you're an idiot, right? It's like, no, you're pissed about this. Help me understand why. Because at some level, that employee that's upset about something or is thrown off by something or it's affecting them, they have a logical path as to what happened to why they realized that. And maybe they're wrong or maybe they're right, but who gives a shit? Like,
Yeah.
how do they see it? What's their reality? Because they're obviously going home at night feeling a certain way for a reason. They're not insane, hopefully not. They've like, oh man, like when you change my bonus structure, I've been making less money and I'm not able to pay for rent like I used to, or whatever. It's like, oh, interesting. Now you might have a logical reason why you did that and how they can make so much more money if they only applied themselves. But how they took it is you're taking from me. And now emotionally, I feel that. Seek first to understand. Put yourself in their shoes. Truly be objective when you're listening and try and ask really good open-ended questions to find the root of what's really going on with them and their story that's led them to this way of being. Then don't be afraid to seek to be understood. So a lot of us have passive or aggressive behavior and natural patterns, or Canadians will have passive aggressive behavior. But like ultimately, we need to recognize that. So it's like, hey, I naturally, I'm actually pretty good at like listening, and that's actually me. Like I'm pretty good at listening. I do struggle sometimes to be more like, hey, like I need to now tell you how I really feel. And so if you have that personality type like I do, the second side of this equation, after you've listened, is to seek to be understood. John, like, thanks for telling me that. And like, when you're saying that you feel like whatever, you're not able to pay for rent, like that's real, man. Like we should talk more about that. Can I tell you a little bit about how that feeling you've been having has been impacting not only like yourself, but the team as a whole? And be real. When this causes because, or when I feel because, and being not afraid to state what's really going on. And so that they understand the impact that that's having. And it's not always just about them. And out of those conversations, you're not really seeking to like be right or wrong. You're really just looking for, it's like, where are we both aligned? And in the example I'm giving, it could be just like, man, like, I think we both want you to make as much money as possible. I think what you want and what I want are the exact same, but we're coming at it very combatively. You put out a bunch of red tape and I'm not talking to you properly about it. And now we're at war with each other instead of solving the root issue, which is like, how do we get you back on goal so you can make lots of money and pay for your rent and we can hit company goals? But because we've like pit each other against each other, we're on this. I always think of like, am I on the opposite side of the tennis court with somebody knocking a ball, telling them why they're wrong, or they're knocking it back, telling them why I'm wrong? Or are we on the same side of the tennis court with my arm around them, looking at the problem together, being like, how do we solve this? The problem still exists, but I need to be on the same side of the tennis court as them. And so slowing down to have like a conflict is what I call it. To seek first to understand and then seek to be understood. It's just Google it. It's conflict management. Conflict management 101. But like having the time to do that is important.
Yeah. Not a mystery. This is a sort of proven concept, but doing it is harder than discovering how to do it. So I hope people understand, for those of us who have time in the management seat, how deeply wise it is what you just said. I mean, there literally could not be a better framework for this. And if somebody was able to consistently do what you just said, they'd be one of the better managers in the entire industry all the time, because humans are imperfect.
It's like, especially when I was coaching members back in the day and franchisees, actually, it's like 30% of the conversation. And they have to constantly like, how do I, okay, so-and-so is mad. I'm mad at so-and-so. I'm like, wait, let's slow down. Let's talk about conflict management. Let's like get into like how to do this. And yeah, because our emotions run deep and they convince us that there's gotta be another way. I gotta be able to just push him into this. I gotta be able to fire that guy. I'm like, yeah, all things can happen. Hold on. Just like, have we had a conflict first?
What do you
So
think they want? uh,
yeah.
I was this very interesting conversation. Deeply wise what you just said. Had a very interesting conversation. I pitched a subject to a business 5 times larger than mine on a call that just said, what is your, like, how do you manage project managers? It just seems to be like with estimators, there's a little more data driven. They seem to be incentivized by different things. The personalities are different. Project managers are just kind of an odd duck sometimes, depending on who you hire and how you set it up. And that one person said, listen, I do believe in the KPIs and you certainly have to address them when they fall into the red. But honestly, their one-on-one meetings consisted only of what could be called a therapy session, which is, how you doing, man? How was your weekend? And then shutting up for a half an hour. And then honestly, at the end of it, he says, every one of my project managers walks away like, that was great. Hey, this is awesome. I can't wait to get out there. And literally the manager of that person was like, well, I said 4 things and I moved on with my, it's not how I wanted this to go, but it's deeply meaningful to them and I'm here for it. So
Yeah, it's realizing actually probably that role, they're sandwiched between the painter and the customer in the company more than any other role in the business, right? They're on the front lines being yelled at by the customer, being yelled at by the painter, and being yelled at by the company. And so, yeah, they take on probably the most amount of like emotional turmoil or stress that happens in a production season. Sales guys, a little bit, but they get to go sell the job and pass it over. Admin, for sure, they do too, and especially office admin, customer success. But again, it's not as direct. It's the
no, and a
production manager.
completely different relationship. Everybody's happy to see the estimator, but everybody's got question when it comes time to actually getting a human in their house and paying the bill. It's a different
So,
relationship for sure. Okay. Also, what I love about you, Danny, and BTA is that you guys put your money where your mouth is, and you have given us a code, and there is a downloadable toolkit full of this stuff: comp and incentive tools, employment agreements, GSR meeting templates, candidate profiles, critical conversation framework, which you just talked about, career path examples, project life cycles, and org charts and stuff like that. So there's a link in this. You can download this right away. I followed the link, get some information from you, and you get the stuff right away. So as always, you guys, I think you understand what a relationship is. You guys are here. You're here to proffer what you guys do, but you always offer something in return. And that's something I've always admired about you and your entire organization.
yeah, man, this is good. So we started this years ago because I was like, I think that the coaching space 10 years, it's better actually now. Coaching space 10 years ago was messed up. It was too transactional and it took advantage of people without offering real value. And B, the contracting space was highly underprofessionalized and just needed help. And if you can help people genuinely, the right people can come forward and work with you. And that's always been my philosophy. It's cool to watch 10 years later. That opinion I have is actually slowly shifting to being, I actually think there's good coaching companies out there right now. I actually think our industry is starting to professionalize,
Dude,
and things are moving in the right direction. And I acknowledge and am stoked to be a part of that. So
likewise. And I track it from the PCA, the Painting Contractors Association level. I track it through all the travels. I'll do 22 dates of traveling around and talking to business owners. And of course, I'm the lighthouse through Ask a Painter. A lot of people give me a lot of very interesting emails, especially now that the economy's changed. And boy, do I have some anecdotal and hard data about what's going on. And I think you and I, through collections of our own data and experiences, are coming upon the same thing, which is the economy's changed. This industry is becoming younger, more professional, and more diverse. And the last thing I want to ask you is, I think that is rear looking a little bit, or maybe even present. I got to ask you, you're such a big thinker all the time. What is interesting to you? What are you keeping your finger on the pulse of? What should we be open to in the next 1 to 10 years that might be changes or something that might affect us that we need to start paying attention to now?
I mean, we all talk about AI now, but listen, one thing that I think our industry has felt safe from is like, oh yeah, but AI is not going to really affect my industry quite yet. Like we're good, and so we're kind of holding on to that emotional teddy bear, being like, it's going to be okay for us, though, right? Pretty okay. If anything, will be really good for us, and it can be. Here's the thing that no one really wants to talk about yet is robotics, and what I think and what I've been like, I nerd out on this stuff, but like Moore's law is the exponential growth of technology over right now. Well, for up until recently, it's been about every 18 months. all the knowledge and it's based on how many on-off switch transistors, like ones and zeros, can be calculated in the price performance of a microchip. But like that's double folded every 18 months for the last 100 years since we created the transistor. That's now going even faster. AI is moving at like 300% improvement a year. So yeah, it's massive. It's unprecedented. And so we're like, okay, but that's AI. That's like, it's going to replace all the online stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I know, I get it. But you got to realize this is going to reach a point, and a lot of people are saying it's 2027, where it reaches artificial general intelligence, and it will have the ability to improve robotics at that exponential rate. Robotics starts to enter the marketplace. Those who are owners at some level have to think through how to stay competitive, which is going to be thinking through the adoption of robotics in the workplace. It's probably a year or two or maybe 4 ahead of its time, but it's worth thinking about, and it's worth looking into, and it's worth seeing. And it's like, I don't think anybody has to worry about that in 2025. I actually also don't think anybody has to worry about that in 2026. But if you start looking into it, I bet you by 2027, there's going to be some opportunity and options out there. By 2028, it's going to start to hit. And by 2030-ish, it's going to be like, how do you adopt robotics into your business? There'll be webinars on this, so that we can stay as productive as our competitors.
What's interesting to me is that 10 years ago, when I got involved with the PCA, I met a dude who was a fighter pilot, ex-fighter pilot, who owned a big commercial painting company, and he was already starting to craft his own little automated painting machines and things like that. Some of it was a forklift, some of it was remote control, some of it was this, but for a big square commercial building outside, there was some automation and there wasn't that many humans there. Now you take that was 10 years ago. Now, we have a friend in Denver who's having paint robots on industrial sites. We have a friend in New Jersey who is now drone washing water tanks and things like this. So I think you can look to the commercial and certainly the industrial sector and say, well, whatever they're doing now, about 3 years, there's a very good likelihood that some of this is going to trickle down into some of this. And honestly, Danny, I wouldn't be surprised 12, 24, 36 months from now, somebody's got a drone pressure washer for washing houses. You know what I mean? So it's, you never know.
And here's the thing, what is currently cool and probably a little bit gimmicky will become very real, and it'll come faster than we have the ability to process, because again, just everyone listening, there's a difference between linear growth and exponential growth. When we talk about the term exponential growth, the human brain automatically uses linear growth to make a judgment about when things are going to come. But if you actually mathematically calculate it's going to double fold at least every 18 months, it might even triple every 12 months based on how AI is moving, you suddenly realize, oh crap, like what is 2 times better is suddenly 4 times, suddenly 8, suddenly 16, suddenly 32 times better within a matter of years. And so the drone pressure washer, whatever the thing is right now, it will be at least 32 times better than it currently is in 5 years.
Isn't that wild?
If not more, if not exponentially more. And when you're like, oh, right, 32 times better for that little gadget. Yeah, I guess that would pretty much just do the job.
And also, technically, what I've noticed from an outsider, all this is then mass adoption, or at least adoption leads to mass adoption, which makes the price go down. It's more available. And then all of a sudden like now we have drones in our company for marketing. 5 years ago, 6 years, 10 years ago, if you had a drone doing videos, oh my God, he's a spaceman, things like that, and now you can go get a drone for $17 and get a video off it. It's not going to be perfect, but it's there. So same thing. It's going to hit us quicker than we think.
Oh crap, like this gets real fast real quick. So yeah, we'll see how long it takes. I just Google somebody called Raymond Kurzweil, who is a futurist for Google, and he's been since the 80s making predictions on technology and where things lead. It's very fascinating, and the guy's not wrong, and he's not been wrong. I've been following him probably since 2005-ish. It's cool. It's scary, but it's like, it's not just AI through your computer. There's more coming, and it's going to take a while, but then once it hits, it's going to hit pretty fast. So
yeah, I feel like it's not a car that just goes faster. It's not even a car anymore, and it changes the way you think about transportation, and it changes your life. So I'm there for it, Danny. I know you are too. I can't wait to see how it works, and hopefully we can be the early adopters of a lot of this, or at least help usher it in. Because staying ahead of it or being a part of it is way better than reacting to everybody else who is. So
totally, yeah. It starts with learning, seeing, and then we'll get into the change management process probably in 3 to 5 years from now. So
I love it. Okay. Breakthrough Academy. If people are interested in being coached by people like you and thought leaders like you, what do they do?
I think the best thing, you give them a link, download those resources. You're going to become a lead in our system. We have a podcast every week that goes out to called Contract Revolution. Look at our website from that. You'll get connected to us that way. If you're interested, you also get a little bit of a taste of what we do and check out the resources we have. Read our website, connect with us, let us know. But yeah, I think that link is probably the best place because it gives somebody a chance to just get some freebies, try it out a bit, and get connected to our mailing list. So yeah.
You got it. Danny, thank you for being here today. Really appreciate your time. And as always, I go to you for the big thoughts and you never disappoint, and appreciate you very much, man.
Awesome, man. No worries. Thanks, Nick.
See ya. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching Ask a Painter Live. You have a link there, not only for your downloadable toolkit, but also to get in contact with BTA. Make sure you follow the link to the PCA events that we have as well, too. It's the height of the summer, but starting in the fall, we got our big 4 events, PCA in Espanol, Women in Paint, Residential, Commercial, and of course, then in February of next year, the Expo. I know that you guys are always a present at those things, and we're always look forward to seeing you. Support the PCA, support BTA, and get out there and make some happy